The world floods into the same crowded Mediterranean islands, chasing the same infinity pools, the same sunset photos, the same overpriced rosé. There is another coastline. Older, quieter, almost forgotten. Here, the walls are made of coral, cut from the reef itself by hands that worked 600 years ago. Here, the doors are carved with patterns that once told the world how wealthy, and how powerful, the family behind them truly was. This is the Swahili Coast. And what you're about to see, the guidebooks don't mention. The tour buses don't stop here. Today, we're stepping inside a private sanctuary built by the trade elite of the 14th century, and somehow, it's still standing. Still breathing, still waiting. Picture the eastern edge of Africa, where the Indian Ocean meets the land in a long, unbroken line of turquoise. For most travelers, this stretch of coastline is a blank space on the map, somewhere between a safari and a stopover. But 1,000 years ago, this was not the edge of anything. This was the center of the world. Long before European ships ever rounded the Cape, the Swahili Coast was one of the richest trading frontiers on the planet. Merchants here didn't just trade in ivory and gold, they traded in ideas, in architecture, in language itself. Arab dhows arrived on the monsoon winds carrying porcelain from China, glass from Persia, spices from India. They left laden with gold from the interior, ebony, and the coast's most prized export of all, position. Because to control this shoreline was to control the artery between two continents. And where there is that kind of wealth, there is architecture built to protect it, and to display it. The families who rose to power along this coast didn't build palaces the way you might imagine a palace. No golden domes, no sprawling courts visible from the sea. Their wealth was private, their power was quiet, and so they built stone villas, fortresses of coral and lime, tucked behind narrow alleyways, indistinguishable from the outside, breathtaking within. Today, we go inside one of them. To find a villa like this, you don't follow a map. You follow a person who knows a person. The alleyways of the old stone town settlements twist without logic, narrow enough that two people must turn sideways to pass, shaded so deeply that the ocean heat disappears the moment you step into them. There are no signs, no numbers, just a single, unassuming wooden door, weathered by salt air and centuries of monsoon seasons, set into a wall of raw coral block. And then, the door opens. What waits on the other side is a kind of architectural sleight of hand that defined this coast for 600 years, the contrast trick. From the street, these homes look almost defensive, closed, unreadable. But step through that threshold, and you enter a completely different world, an open-air courtyard, cooled by ocean breeze funneled through carved lattice screens, walls rising 3 stories around a quiet interior garden. This was intentional. Wealth on the Swahili Coast was never meant to be seen by strangers in the street. It was meant to be discovered, revealed only to those trusted enough to be invited in. Sound familiar? It's the same instinct that built the great riads of Marrakesh, the same philosophy behind old-world hospitality everywhere. The best things are never advertised. They are earned through relationship, through trust, through invitation. You are, quite literally, standing inside that principle right now. Let's talk about what these walls are actually made of, because it changes how you see everything. Coral stone, not brick, not imported marble. The builders of this coast quarried living coral rag from the reef itself, a material soft enough to carve when freshly cut, but one that hardens like limestone once exposed to air. This meant master craftsmen could work it like wood, cutting intricate geometric friezes, Quranic calligraphy, and rosette patterns directly into the walls, details you'd expect from a palace, not a merchant's home. Look closely at the plasterwork inside a villa like this, and you'll find powdered coral mixed with egg white to create a smooth, almost porcelain-like white lime finish, a technique that has survived monsoons, humidity, and 6 centuries, largely untouched. And then there are the doors. If there is one symbol that defines Swahili elite architecture, it is the carved door. Massive, dark, made of hardwood, and covered edge to edge in geometric rosettes, chain motifs, and calligraphy. These weren't decorative flourishes, they were a language. The number of rosettes, the depth of the carving, the type of wood used, all of it signaled status. Merchants competed, quietly, door by door, to show whose trade networks reached the furthest, whose fortune ran the deepest. Some of these doors have brass studs, a design element historians believe was borrowed from Indian Gujarati traders, a physical record, carved into wood, of a trade relationship that spanned an ocean. Step further inside, and the ceilings tell their own story. Exposed mangrove poles, laid in tight parallel rows, supporting the floor above. A construction method so effective it's still used in coastal Swahili buildings today. Every element of this villa, from foundation to ceiling, is a conversation between necessity and luxury. Cool stone for the heat. Courtyards for airflow. Carved lattice screens allowing members of the household to observe the courtyard below without being seen themselves. This wasn't decoration for its own sake. This was intelligent design, centuries before anyone used that phrase. Now, who were the people wealthy enough to commission a home like this? The Swahili Coast's trade elite were not a single ethnicity or a single story. They were the product of centuries of intermarriage and exchange between Bantu-speaking African communities and Arab, Persian, and later Indian merchant families. This blending is, in fact, where the word Swahili comes from, derived from the Arabic word for coast, but describing an entirely original culture, an entirely original language, born from the meeting of Africa and the wider Indian Ocean world. These families ran trading empires the way a modern conglomerate might, diversified interests spanning ivory, textiles, and spices. It's worth noting honestly that this wealth also came, in part, from a trade in enslaved people, a difficult history the region's museums and historians are increasingly willing to confront directly, and one that adds real weight and complexity to these walls. But within these walls, daily life unfolded with a rhythm dictated by the ocean itself. Meals and conversation often took place on carved wooden platforms called baraza, built directly into the exterior walls of the home, a place to receive guests, conduct business, and watch the street without ever inviting strangers past the threshold. Textiles imported from India draped over furniture built by local carpenters. Chinese porcelain, often broken pieces, prized as decorative wall inlay, was set directly into plaster around doorframes, a design signature so distinctive that art historians can date a home almost by the porcelain shards alone. This was a household built at the intersection of continents. Every object inside it had crossed an ocean to get there. To understand why a family would build something this elaborate, you have to understand the scale of what was happening along this coast at its peak. Between roughly the 12th and 16th centuries, city-states along the Swahili coast operated as independent, wealthy trading hubs, each competing, each thriving, connected not by roads but by the monsoon winds themselves. Traders timed their entire year around these wind patterns, sailing south and west on one seasonal wind, returning north and east months later on its reversal. This ocean highway linked the East African coast to Arabia, Persia, India, and, through intermediaries, all the way to China. Gold from inland kingdoms, ivory from the interior, and mangrove timber flowed outward. Silk, spices, glass beads, and porcelain flowed in. The families who controlled this exchange amassed fortunes that, in relative terms, rivaled European merchant dynasties of the same era. And they invested that fortune not in armies, not in visible monuments, but in homes like this one, quiet, coral-walled, seemingly modest from the outside, extraordinary within. It was wealth designed to be felt, not flaunted. A philosophy of luxury that feels almost radical today, in an age of visible excess. Perhaps that's why these villas still resonate so strongly with a certain kind of modern traveler, the kind who has already seen the loud, obvious version of luxury, and is searching for something quieter. Something with weight, something real. Today, many of these coral stone villas still stand, some restored, some in careful, ongoing preservation, some still privately owned by descendants of the very families who built them centuries ago. Walk through one at dusk, and something happens that's hard to describe until you feel it. The heat of the day releases from the stone. The call to prayer drifts faintly from a nearby mosque, itself built from the same coral rock. The ocean, invisible from inside the courtyard walls, still makes itself known, a hum, a pressure in the air, a reminder that everything here was built in conversation with the sea. There is a stillness in these spaces that no beach resort can manufacture. It isn't the stillness of isolation, it's the stillness of permanence. Of a place that has already survived 600 monsoon seasons, 600 years of trade booms and trade collapses, colonization, independence, and now, quietly, a slow rediscovery by travelers who are done with the crowded, obvious version of paradise. This is not a museum. People still live in homes like this. Still open those same carved doors every morning. Still sit on the baraza in the evening, the way their ancestors did, watching the alley below. That continuity, 600 years unbroken, is the real luxury on offer here. Not a 5-star finish. A living history you're invited to briefly, quietly, become part of. So the next time you picture an ocean escape, ask yourself, do you want the version everyone else has already seen? Or do you want the version that's been quietly waiting behind an unmarked coral wall for 600 years, for someone patient enough, curious enough, to knock? The Swahili Coast doesn't advertise itself. It never has. That's precisely why it's still standing exactly as it was, undiluted, unhurried, and utterly unforgettable. If this is the kind of journey you've been searching for, one built on heritage, privacy, and genuine stillness, we'd love to help you plan it. Email us to begin designing your own seamless, unhurried escape into Africa's hidden sanctuaries. Private transfers, curated access, and a level of care that matches the quiet luxury you just witnessed. Subscribe to travelafrica.com for more journeys the guidebooks never mention. We'll see you on the coast.